Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, everyone. Welcome to everybody here in the sanctuary and everybody at home online. We wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Denise Ager. This is Congregation Kol Ami in West Hollywood, California. And so we're so glad that Rabbi Ross Levy is here with us and helping us lead a Shabbat service for all of you tonight. Let us take a deep breath. The first Shabbat after daylight savings time is switched. So it's still a little light here. We're getting used to the different season, and take time together to let the week that was go, and to be present here with each other, with community, and to invite God into our midst. So let us begin with Lisa, our wonderful accompanist, Lisa Edwards, with a beautiful piece from Cantor Benji Ellen Schiller, a Zamra. Well, I have a little bit of a confession to make to all of you before we begin Shabbat services. I know it's not Yom Kippur, but it's not the portion. Next week is the Parsha, but today is 50 years since my bat mitzvah, which was on March 17th, 1973. Different Parsha. That's next week's Parsha, so I'll speak a little bit more, but I can't believe it's been that long. Seems just like yesterday, right? And when we think about the Jewish milestones that happened in our lives, whether it's as a parent when you bring your child into the covenant, or you have a bat mitzvah or mitzvah, or you someone who chose Judaism and you convert to Judaism and go to the mikvah, or you stand under the chuppah at a wedding, all of those significant life cycle moments help build the story of your life. And they are also moments that shape our identity about who we are, and who are the people in our lives that help shape who we've become. So again, who were the teachers or people that played a role in making you? Sometimes we learn what to do, and sometimes same people also just people teach what to do. Be very, very different. Lessons, all those parts of our identity into one stillness. So we that time into the disparate parts of yourself that maybe get put to different places, and the we allow to fill the and the holiness of Shabbat. Let us welcome Shabbat with words of L'chuna Ranana. You can find them on your insert in your bulletin. One of the Psalms for the Shabbat.
Let us sing out to God, maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice.
But if you're on your phone, if you could like turn it down a little bit, that would be great. So we're so glad and honored to have Sandra Levinson, her daughter Deborah, sister Cynthia, and nephew Sam light our Shabbat candles in memory of Sandra's husband Robert and her only. Could you come forward? We turn page 120 and 121 in our prayer book for lighting of the Shabbat candles. Read these two. Stand right here. Okay. It's on. Oh, I got to just hold it really close to your mouth, though.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light. So may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu le'likner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen.
Stay here.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'hadlik ner v'tzivanu le'hadlik ner shel Shabbat Blessed are you who commands us to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Now, if one of you will hold the Kiddush cup up high, we'll continue with the blessing over the wine on page 123 as Rabbi Levy leads us in prayer.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zeicher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat lechaim.
Shabbat shalom. Family, take a sip.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. Say it.
Or today we might want to say slansha. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sure, you can all.
Slansha.
Is that the
Saint
Irish? Is that the Irish?
That's the
For
Irish.
St. Patrick's.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Slansha.
Okay. Thank you, family.
I know. I don't own any green.
It is not green wine. I just want to be really clear. For those of you that will come to Israel with me in May, you'll know that when we go up to the hills of Sfat, or those of you that have been to Israel, and you look down in the valley below, you can see where this next piece of liturgy came to life. Because the mystics of Sfat would go down in the valley below, and they would go out, literally go out to greet Shabbat as the Sabbath would come in. For those of you that we had a cancellation, so there's one room left available before we cancel the room. So if somebody wants to come to Israel in May, we still have a room available. So I'm just saying. So if you'd like to see the actual valley where they would go out and sing Lecha Dodi to greet Shabbat, you'll see it when we go there this May and June. We turn to Lecha Dodi in our prayer books, page 138, as we sing together.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad ishmi'anu el ha'meyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor ha'beracha mirosh mikedem neslucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava tzlila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki ba'orech kumi ori, uri uri shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat
greet Shabbat as she enters our midst.
בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לי תקלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לי תקלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Our custom is to greet one another. Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. Introduce yourself if you don't know the name of the people near you, and wish everybody at home Shabbat Shalom. So great to be back and see all of you there.
Shabbat Shalom, Mom and Dad, from Peter, and for me as well. And Shabbat Shalom, Ronnie. Hope you had a good spend quiet. And Shabbat Shalom to all of you joining us online. We're so happy to have you with us.
We remain standing, turning to page 146 as we call each other into prayer with the Baruch Hu.
Please be seated. Please join me in prayer at the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. Now, once again, 152 may not only fail between that we are all similar.
ובכל מאודיך,
והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם בזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם.
Well, Purim's now past us, and that means in front of us, in just a couple of weeks, will be Pesach, Passover. And in fact, the coming week, it's already the 25th of Adar today. We're at the end of the month of Adar. We only have 5 more days, and the new month will descend upon us, I think, Thursday. We'll say the prayer for the new month later on in our service. So, times of fleeting to prepare yourselves. Times of fleeting to get your house literally in order. And the chametz cleaning begins. But that chametz, that stuff that we've accumulated over the last few months since we cleansed ourselves spiritually at Yom Kippur, it's a reminder that spring cleaning isn't just something that's physical. It's also something that you have to do in your heart. It's something that you have to do in your spirit. And so even as we prepare and make sure you have the right matzah and you pull down recipes that you want to experiment with this year, maybe you have some from family, maybe you're like me, every year I'm looking for new things. I don't want to just eat the same old thing every year at Seder. But don't forget the spiritual cleaning that we need to do. And I'm so thrilled that Rabbi Levy and our executive director, Devor Servi, who's an incredible teacher as well, are going to be offering a class on spiritual cleansing and cleaning before Pesach. So I think that's Sunday, March 26th. It's online, right? So
Well, the event is in person.
And what? Say that again.
The program is in person.
Oh, the program's in person, even better.
We're gonna be
So
making
some techniques for learning how to prepare your house. Not your physical house, but the house of you as we enter this most amazing moment in Jewish life, in the formation of Jewish history and Jewish identity that created truly the Jewish people. So let us think about that preparation, page 157 together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 158, Song of Freedom.
Ya la la la, ya la 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 la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Mi chamocha va'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh feleh, nora tehilot Ya la 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 ya la. V'nemar ki v'Adonai et Yaakov v'elo mi'ad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. If you'll join me at the bottom of page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. As Rabbi Eger taught us, we are coming to the end of the month of Adar, which is noted for the abundance of simcha, of joy and festivities. And we'll turn in a moment here to page 162 and join together in Yismechu. And I think that having this special prayer, which is special for Shabbat, it is not in the daily prayer service, reminds us that even though there is 1 month, actually occasionally there are 2 months of Adar on the Hebrew calendar, that really focuses on joy, that each week and really each moment, but especially on this day of Shabbat, is another opening and opportunity for joy, that true joy that brings light and fullness into the world. So if you'll please join me, page 162 at the bottom of the page with Yismechu. Yismechu
במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו Shabbat, the Koreone, Mekadosh Shevi, Mekadosh Shevi, Olam Yisme'u ve'yitangu, Yisme'u ve'yitangu, Eituvecha, Yisme'u v'malchutcha. Shabbat וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג.
חמדת ימים אותו קראת, חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית, זכר למעשה בראשית, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי
Well, we've come to the tefillah, that middle section of the service, in which we offer our words as sacrifice, the words of our heart, our intentions, our kavanah. as well as the fixed prayer of our traditions, the keva. And I don't know, a lot of times Jews say, I don't know how to pray. That's what they say to me. I don't know how to pray, Rabbi. Well, that's because so much of our prayers are fixed. So if you say the prayers as they're written, then you're praying in Jewish tradition. But what I hear really in that question is, I don't know what I'm supposed to be thinking, feeling, or doing while I do that, right? Because most Jews still don't understand the Hebrew that they're saying, right? They're mouthing the words, but what does it mean? What does all that mean? And what intention, what is the kavanah that I'm bringing to the words? And that is something that you need to study more and explore what those prayer means, what those themes are. And in our prayer book is a wonderful guide to help you understand. So for those of you here in the sanctuary and you look at the prayer book, you'll notice on the far corners that there's a listing. And then they highlight in black what prayer we're on. So if you'll just go with me for a minute, turn to page 166 and 167, you'll see that at the top it has avot and imahot on the left-hand side, and that's in black, and the rest of them are blue. It tells you the orders of the prayers that you're going to say. Now, the trick is you have to know what avot and imahot mean. Right? Avot, fathers, imahot, mothers. Av, ve'em. Right? It's a prayer that talks about our ancestors. Who were our spiritual ancestors as Jews? Who are your spiritual ancestors? None other, at least in this prayer, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Now, that's many generations ago, but it also should trigger in you a conversation with yourself about who your ancestors are. And it asks God to bless you, not because of what you did, but because of what they did, because of their faith, because of their conviction, and that you get to stand under the umbrella of their glory, and it trickles down on you. What this does is not center you, our narcissistic selves, but looks back at our inheritance, what we have inherited from those who came before us. So as you begin to pray tonight, to try and think about these themes that are part of each of the prayers that we go through. So avot and imahot, ancestors, giverot, thinking about what is God's power in the world. What is God's strength and power? Or lack thereof, maybe. Kedusha, about holiness. The holiness of Shabbat. The holiness of life itself. Avodah, worship. How will you serve? How will you be in service of holiness and of Judaism and of God and of all the values that are part of who we are? Hoda'ah, what do you have gratitude for? What will you give thanks for? And shalom, peace. I know I don't have to translate that one, right? Shalom, to pray for peace, not just in the world, which it needs, but also inner peace that we each seek in this world, to be in balance and comfortable with who we are and who we have become and who we aspire yet to be. So as we pray these prayers, think about these ideas, even if some of the Hebrew might be foreign to you, but it will feel more comfortable as you bring your intentions to the words. Let's rise together and begin together, and then we'll invite you to continue with the words of tradition or the words of inspiration on the left-hand side or the words of your own heart.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tefilatecha Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid Tehilatecha return together with the words on page 180. Yeule ratzon imreifi legion libi lefanecha Say shalom bimroma, say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel. With our prayers still resonating and ringing within us, we offer a special prayer, a special blessing as we stand on the cusp of a new month, this month of freedom, of redemption, another month of celebration, albeit a different sort of celebration than the one we had with Purim. So I'll invite you to turn to page 379 as we rise together as a community and offer this prayer for this new Hebrew month. Yeh ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, together. May the new month bring us goodness and blessing. May we have long life, peace, prosperity, a life exalted by love of Torah and reverence for the divine, a life in which the longings of our hearts are fulfilled for good. Rosh Chodesh Nisan Yeh B'Yom Chamishi, the new month of Nisan, will begin this upcoming Thursday, and let us say together,
Amen.
Amen. And at this point, with our special prayers in mind, we now think of those who may be in need of healing in these next weeks, in this next month, in these next few days. On this Shabbat, Congregation Kol Ami is thinking of John Altshul, Aaron Aronow, Gary Ashland, Stephen Baird, Marion Barrick, Roberta Bennett, Joan Bergman, Elaine Blatt, Latrice Bloom, Louise Cantrell, Wayne Cantrell, Bertha Coldman, Michael Dyer, Tino Felipe, Harav Devora Masha Bat Ita Rezel, Robert Greenberg, Heidi Keba, Seema Lehman, Elka Bat Chizkiah, Addie Lelyveld, Peter Mackler, Larry Mendelson, Zachary Pierce, Vitaly Popov, Tammy Rabowski, Keith Rand, Ben Reback, Arlene Regan, Ivan Rosenberg, Richard Ross, Malka Rachel Bat Golde, Lowell Selvin, Miles Sen, Karen Shanbrom, Edie Schumann, Isabel Simmental Starr, Henry Sommerfeld, Harriet Stein, David Surreal, Stephen Valentino, David Ben Herschel Vabasha, Philip Windsor, Eitan Wolf, and Doug Workman. To these, we add the names of your loved ones. If there's anyone that you're thinking of in need of healing, I invite you to share their names as my hand passes over you. And those of you joining us online, I invite you to share the names of your loved ones as well so we can take them into our hearts with our own. We now offer our prayer for healing, our Misha Berach, the words for which you can find in your bulletin insert. Misha Berach Avoteinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Misha Berach Imoteinu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Misha Berach Avoteinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Misha Berach Imoteinu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And I guess I should say Happy St. Patrick's Day. Now, that may seem strange to wish everyone Happy St. Patrick's Day in synagogue. After all, St. Patrick is a Catholic saint, the patron saint of Ireland. But you might not know much about his story. He was kidnapped from Britain as a young man and sold into slavery to a Celtic priest in Northern Ireland when he was just 16 years old. Years later, he converted to Catholicism and returned there to spread the word and bring people to the Catholic Church. He lived in Ireland on a mission for 20 years, and he died on this date, March 17th, in the year 461. Now, there's some controversy about St. Patrick, and that is that his family, who originally settled in Britain, might have been Jewish. Yeah, you knew that, right? But it seems like it's a big controversy. But this day seems to be more than just about St. Patrick and the church. It's really become a day of Irish heritage. Green beer, bagpipes, and parades mark the day, along with the meal of corned beef and cabbage, of course. That's kind of the Jewish thing, right? Something that the Jews and the Irish have in common is that corned beef. Now, the Irish did not eat corned beef and cabbage traditionally. They ate, that tray food, pork and cabbage. But you have to remember that the Irish who fled Ireland from the potato famine in around 1845 came into contact with a great number of Jews who were already living, for example, in New York City. And then when the mass of Jews from Eastern Europe came, starting in 1881, Jews and the Irish lived in neighborhoods adjacent to one another. And so there was a lot of a flow between the two communities. And so the Irish lived often near kosher butchers. And so they would get corned beef. And it's not a coincidence that James Joyce, the great writer, made his main character in his masterpiece, Ulysses, Leopold Bloom, born to Jewish and Irish parents. So much so that this is an example of kind of the connections between the Irish community here, the diaspora that came here to America, and the Jewish diaspora that came. And it is those Irish Americans that made St. Patrick's Day into this day of cultural Irish heritage rather than a religious holiday. Now, truth be told, there were tensions too between the Jews and the Irish immigrants. It was not always easy. Violence often broke out between Irish gangs and Jewish gangs in the early part of the 20th century. The Irish Catholic press blamed Hollywood Jews for making fun of the Irish in movies. And a group called the Christian Front, white nationalists, was the work of the virulently anti-Semitic Father Charles Coughlin. And that actually laid the groundwork for the work of the virulently anti-Semitic Senator McCarthy and the House Un-American Activities Committee and hearings of the 1950s, which targeted a lot of Jews as communists, and particularly here in Hollywood. All of these are examples of tensions between the Jewish community and the Irish communities. But the situation of Ireland itself really has been about the tensions between Catholics and Protestants, and that has much to teach us. The violent wars between the Catholic IRA, the Irish Republican Army, and the British Army in Northern Ireland are reminiscent of so much of the battles in our own beloved Israel. Ironically, the IRA of today remains virulently anti-Israel. And yet, the Irish Republican Army of the 1920s welcomed the Jewish resistance, early Zionist leaders, and helped them teach and model the early Zionist organizations who were resisting the British mandate. And in fact, Zeb Jabotinsky, author and Zionist leader, founder of Beitar and the Irgun, journeyed to Ireland to actually model the Irgun and his movement on the drive, on the way the IRA wanted to drive out the British. Yitzhak Shamir, a name we should know as a president of Israel, took a guerrilla code name in the early pre-state Israel years of Michael, after the Irish revolutionary leader Michael Collins. Just 3 weeks ago, I stood on the streets of Tel Aviv on a Saturday night with 300 Reform rabbis who went to Israel at this critical moment, and 150,000 Israelis in Tel Aviv alone, protesting the current coalition's plans to, quote-unquote, reform the judiciary. Now, for 11 weeks in a row, Israelis of all political stripes, young and old, left, center, and right, have been standing up for the Israeli democracy. And I want to tell you, this gave me hope. When I read the headlines, and if I only read the headlines, my soul might be crushed, as Israeli democracy is in trouble. But standing there at night after Shabbat, jammed in on the streets of Tel Aviv, knowing that another 150,000 were out all across in other cities, Haifa and Jerusalem, Beersheba, all over the country, that gave me a lot of hope. In November, you'll recall that Israel's election gave Benjamin Netanyahu Likud's nod to form the coalition. And in a scramble for power to preserve himself, Bibi put together the most extreme far-right coalition that Israel has ever known, all for trying to stay out of jail for corruption himself. Netanyahu has played expertly the grievances of the far religious right wing in Israel, the Mizrahi community, the settler community, to form his government. And he invited into his cabinet the violent Itamar Ben-Gvir, leader of the Otzma party, giving him jurisdiction over the West Bank and police as a security minister. And yet this very person has done nothing but over the last number of years incited riot after riot against the Arab population. He even got into a physical altercation in October of 2021 with Joint List, was the Arab party, Ayman Odeh. Netanyahu has in his cabinet Bezalel Smotrich, a leader of the religious Zionist party, now finance minister in his cabinet, whose radical beliefs have led to many controversies. He is a settler. He's a supporter of expanding Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and he opposes Palestinian statehood. And he, too, has been accused of inciting hatred against Arab citizens of Israel. He told Arab-Israeli lawmakers in October 21, and I'm quoting, "It is a mistake that Ben-Gurion didn't finish the job and didn't throw you out in 1948. He calls himself, his own words, a fascist homophobe, and called gay pride parades to be the worst of bestiality." And Bibi had in his cabinet Avi Maoz, who was head of the Noam party. And he was put him in what was going to be created as the Office of Jewish Identity. Maoz is another virulent homophobe whose party has put up posters all over Israel, anti-gay posters. He's an open misogynist. He's virulently anti-reform and conservative Judaism. And get this, he quit the cabinet because it wasn't far right enough for him. So now he's just a member of Knesset. And Bibi also appointed Aryeh Deri as Deputy Prime Minister and Interior and Health Minister. Now, Deri is the head of the Shas party, and Shas is a Mizrahi party of Jews from Moroccan and Yemenite descent, and is a religious party. But he was, some of you might remember that he was convicted of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, and actually served 3 years in prison for that. And in January of this year, the Supreme Court ruled that Deri was not eligible to serve as a cabinet minister because of his criminal convictions, and because of the terms of his plea deal. And so he was actually dismissed from his official posts in the Israeli cabinet. But they're trying now with this judicial reform to pass the rules so that he can wiggle his way back in. In other words, Benjamin Netanyahu has surrounded himself with a bunch of right-wing religious extremist thugs. And these four that I've just mentioned are just the beginning of his efforts to stay in power. But more than that, the proposed changes to the Israeli judicial system are a true threat to preserving Israel as a democratic country. It's been spearheaded by one of the deputy prime ministers, Minister of Justice, Yariv Levin, and the chair of the Knesset's Constitution, Law, and Justice Committee, Simcha Rothman. The judicial reform that they seek, and reform, I put that in quotes, because you think reform might be a good idea, seeks to curb the judiciary's influence over lawmaking and public policy by limiting the Supreme Court's power to exercise judicial review and grant the government control over all judicial appointments and limit the authority of its legal advisors. I mean, that's a big thing. Now, they keep saying, they, meaning Netanyahu and his minions, oh, this is just like America. The ruling governor, the president, gets to appoint judges. And then you can have whoever you want on the court. But it's not true, because in America, they have to go before the Judiciary Committee, And there's a checks and balance over who gets appointed to the court. There's a hearing as well as a vote. But in Israel, the travesty of all of this is that the Supreme Court is Israel's only checks and balance on the Knesset and the government. You see, in Israel, they don't have two houses like we have the Congress, right? The House of Representatives and the Senate. Israel is unicameral, one house, the 120 seats, the Knesset, that's it. And judicial reform would include appointment by the ruling coalition party of all judges. No checks, no balances. The other thing you need to understand that makes Israel unique is that it doesn't have a constitution. So you can't even go back and consult the Constitution for what were the intent even of the founders, right? It only has a Declaration of Independence, and then it has what is known as a set of the basic laws, which is where in Israel you find these ideas of equality, of voting, and all of those things. The so-called reforms that they are rushing through the Knesset would diminish the court's ability to conduct a review of what are the basic laws themselves. Again, no checks and balances on the ruling coalition. These changes would give the far-right extremists like Ben Gvir and Smotrich and Derry more power to restrict the rights of women, to do harm to the LGBTQ community, and of course, reform and conservative Judaism in Israel. It would allow them to ensure a theocracy and continue to threaten the lives of Arab Israelis and other minorities in Israel. And yet I have hope. Those people marching in the street, they weren't from just one political party. They were people of all ages. We saw seniors being pushed in wheelchairs and little kids with their parents. We saw Israeli army reservists. We saw young people. We saw people from Likud. We saw people from labor. It was a fascinating conglomeration and cross-section of the Israeli public. They were marching in the streets chanting Demokratia Akshav, democracy now. They were chanting in the streets, and they had the tech industry set up big television screens in the square there. They were yelling, Busha, Busha, shame, shame. My hope was buoyed by the commitment to democracy of the Israeli people. It is a fragile time in Israel, and we American Jews cannot remain silent about what's happening there. And more importantly, even though we virulently oppose Netanyahu and his government as liberal Jews, as people of good conscience, as people committed to democracy, we cannot abandon Israel, not especially at this time. It is more important than ever to stand with the Israeli people against the fascistic and power-hungry far-right religious people and Bibi's government. I think it's time to double down on giving money to our reform movement in Israel, to the Israel Religious Action Center, who fights in courts for the rights of women and liberal Jews and Arab citizens. It's time to give money to our LGBTQ organizations who really need our support and help, like the Agudah, the national big organization that fights in the Knesset, or the Jerusalem Open House, or Ma'avarim Trans Center in Tel Aviv. It's time to stand up for Jewish democratic Israel for all of its citizens. So I hope in the days and weeks ahead, as this continues to boil and you read a lot in the papers, that you'll take a moment not to be crushed, but to stand strong with the people of Israel, the citizens of Israel who are week after week out in the streets And I urge you, if you have some extra tzedakah, to share it with those organizations and those communities who are fighting for the democracy that we so desperately need in the land of Israel. I know I've doubled down my efforts, and I hope you will too. Shabbat Shalom. I'm happy to invite our president, Peter Mackler, forward. He has some important announcements for us. Peter? Use this one.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you for that spiritual pot of gold over the rainbow. So it's sort of a little bit. No? Rabbi Levy is giving me this really bad look over here. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, as Rabbi said. My name is Peter Mackler, and I have the honor of serving as president of Congregation Kol Ami. We want to wish you a very happy and Shabbat Shalom. And as always, thank you to Travis Smith for his audio and video, and to Lisa Edwards for our musical accompaniment. Be sure to mark your calendars for a special online class, March 22nd and 29th, taught by our student rabbi, Frankie Saltzman. They will be teaching about how Jewish tradition approaches the topic of gender throughout the ages. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Thursday, March 30th at 1:00 p.m. online, Rabbi Yaga will teach a special queering Passover class. This is in conjunction with the Center of LGBT and Gender Studies at the Pacific School of Religion. Again, you don't want to miss this one. Then join us on Saturday, April 1st at 10:00 a.m. for our Shabbat Awakening service, and then hear from our scholar in residence, Dr. Michal Ben Asher Siegel, professor of Talmud from Ben Gurion University of the Negev, and we will be serving lunch. Don't miss this opportunity. Register online, and I will tell you in a moment how to do that. Kol Ami's annual Passover Seder is soon. Thursday night, April 6th at 6:00 p.m. sharp. Join us here for our community second night Seder. Fully kosher LaPesach by Kensington Catering. $85 for members, $95 for non-members. You can register online on our website, and I will tell you how to do that in just a moment. This is sure to sell out, so please make your reservations early. Yiska Passover on the last day of Pesach will be hosted by Kol Ami on Wednesday, April 12th at 8:30 a.m. here in our sanctuary. As always, we hope that you'll keep up to date on all that is happening at our sacred congregation, Kol Ami, by visiting our website. This is what I was telling you about a moment ago. Offer at kol-ami.org. That's kol-ami.org. Look for our info about our upcoming classes and trip to the Reagan Library for Yom HaShoah. You can register for all of our online and in-person programs right there. And please, while you are visiting our website, please consider a donation to our sacred community to support the holy work that we do all year long. Once again, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Peter. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. We continue on page 586. We rise as the ark is open, please.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
On this Shabbat, we're observing the Yortzeit of Bernard Wasserstein, grandfather of Jonathan Goldstein, Goldie Saltzman, grandmother of Cantor Saltzman, Mary Jane Ogilvie, mother of Andrew Ogilvie, Marlene Bram, spouse of Phyllis Rittner, Jerry Bellenkoff, partner of Dan Fiddleman, Morton Glenn, father of Wendy Glenn, Elaine Fischel, friend of Ben Reback, whose Yortzeit plaques are lit in loving remembrance. We're also recalling the Yortzeits of Robert Levinson, husband of Sandra Levinson, and Bertha Skolnick, mother of Sandra Levinson. Joel Andrew Shanbaum, brother of Karen Shanbaum. Frances Brody, mother-in-law of Lynette Graves. Lucille McKinney, grandmother of Yaffa Hughes. Tom Mosley, friend of Dan Blatt. Sidney Levin, uncle of Gail Ehrlich. Regina Tarika, grandmother of Daniel Tarika. Barry David Shanbaum, brother of Karen Shanbaum. Irving Davidson, father of John Davidson. Frida Bobrowski, grandmother of Josh Bobrowski. Mabel Goodman, grandmother of Elise Resch. Beatrice Becker, mother of Michael Becker. Albert Berkman, father of Stan Berkman. Harriet Meisner, aunt of Robin Waxner. Stephen Taller, brother of Martin Taller. Irma Silberman, mother of Harvey Silberman. Sam Wolfman, father of Lynn Harrell. Bill Leonard, partner of Steve Addison. And Jordan Schwartz, cousin of David Levy. We're reciting Kaddish for Herb Jacobson, Richard Frank, Lou Vicinelli, Dave Hall, Howard Romanoff, Greg Sonkin, Ruth Forster Williams, Reba Goldman, Michael Simmental, Victor Escobar, Alvin Gross, Ernie Benson, Kathy Weiss, Ellen Mensner, Janice Hooten Levi, Anton Malley, Josh Kaplan, Don Hollis, Jason Thomas Lodge, Elaine Cohen, Maeve Eisenberg, Bart Kogan, Dabby Blatt, Stephen Shapiro, Carol Rosenthal, Murray Horwitz, Murray Blank, Steve Hochstein, Ernie Sosnick, Stephen Wright, Scott Magid, Gloria Brown, Rosina Spitzer, Lizzie Taylor. We note with sadness the death this week of Jamie Hornback, sister of Alan Weisbart, and David Bird, father of Reverend Denise Barnes. There are others that you would like to include. Please say their name aloud at this time. Those of you online can please put their name in the chat. Together, we recite the Kaddish on page 586, 96?
98.
98, I got it backwards. Together we say, Yit Gadal, V'Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'Yalma, Divrach, Hirutei, V'Yamlich Malchutei, V'Chayechon, V'Yamechon, V'Chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, B'Agala, V'Zman Kari, V'Yimru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Leolam U'Mei Maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudasha b'richu le'ela minkol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'kol Yishvei Tel v'yimru amen. May the source of peace send peace and comfort to all who mourn and all of us who have been bereaved. And together we say, Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated.
Our concluding song for tonight comes from our Kaddish prayer, Oseh Shalom B'Mromav. And there's a little bit of choreography with it that Rabbi Egger hopefully can help me out with.
shalom. Uyase shalom. Uyase shalom. Alleluia. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. We make motzi for those of us joining in the oneg afterwards with a special treat from Sandra. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. May this Shabbat renew in you the spirit of hope, the spirit of joy, and the spirit of love. And may you leave here sharing that spirit of hope, joy, and love with one another and all those you come in contact with. Shabbat shalom, good Shabbos, everyone. Shabbat shalom at home. Thanks for joining.